This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Hannah Rowe and Veronica Shelton from Oak Theory. We're going to talk today about some UI, UX, some of the changes that are going on in the industry when it comes to artificial intelligence and other things that are there, and what it's like for them and some of the projects that they've been working on. Anyway, with all that being said, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, just take a minute to give some background information about you guys so that the audience listening can have some context for our conversation. Hannah, you want to start?
Sure. Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us on. I'm Hannah. I'm one of the co-founders at Oak Theory, here with my founder partner, Veronica. We founded Oak Theory about 4 years ago now. And so we call ourselves a startup studio. We cover everything from branding to web design and UX UI design. And UX UI design is basically, it's kind of our bread and butter beyond all the work that we do. And that's my personal background coming from product management side. And then Veronica comes in from the creative direction and product design side. And so, we started our company really with the mission to do good work, but also in our field, there's not a lot of folks that look like us, leading companies like ours. And so we make up 0.1% of UX UI design firms that are led and founded by women of color. And we take a lot of pride in that and just the perspectives that we bring and the way we approach our design work, the way we collaborate with our clients. And so, we're here to take up more space and do good work.
Awesome. Veronica, so what's your background?
So my background is in creative direction and front-end development, but I would mainly say creative direction for sure. And so with that, the company, it's been kind of just working with the creative side, making sure we're executing our projects right and on time and, building things out right. Awesome. I think Hannah did a great job with introducing us.
So when you go to start a company like this, what kind of challenges and fears that you guys had to overcome at the very beginning to get the ball rolling with Oak Theory?
Everything. I don't know. I think honestly, we just hit, I'm sure a lot of people that you have on your show are entrepreneurs or business owners. It's you just hit a point where you're we should just create something because what we're seeing in the market is not where we want to work, and we want to bring how our perspective and our approach and see what we can do. And so I think in the beginning, it's really how do you get our first client? What does it mean to have a studio? One of our initial thing was, how do we make it so it's not a 2-person studio where it's not just the founders with a name of a studio or an agency on top of it. We're now a team of 15 people. And so it's from the get-go, we were how do we make this so we scale and we're not making it another freelance design agency?
Yeah, I think that was our thing. We hire to fire ourselves. That's always our goal. And so that's why we continue to grow, because as we find more team members who are doing things that we can pass over to them, we're realizing all the little gaps in places where we can come in and make things more efficient or grow, and then we have more tasks to do. So that was definitely our initial challenge for sure. Another was definitely starting a business without having any experience. We didn't really have the mentors yet, because I think we jumped into it so fast, we didn't even know this is something we wanted to do. And so when we did jump in, we had to learn everything from scratch. And one of those things was convincing people that your service is necessary and worth what you want it to be worth. And I believe we got lucky I want to say, we found a strategy to it, but I think we just got really lucky at the time we were in because we started right before the pandemic actually hit. Like we were in the beginning of the pandemic. And so a lot of companies were changing how they were communicating with their customers, and UX and UI became a really big thing. And people started respecting it a bit more. And we were right at the cusp of that. We were like, great, like we lucked out. They understand us.
Yeah. So when it comes to, UI, UX and design from, let's say someone that's not familiar with what kind of services that means. So what is that exactly?
Yeah.
How would you describe that to them? So let's say you're at a conference and you meet somebody and you want to pitch your services to them, and they're like, yeah, we have a website, and they don't really understand, all that goes into that.
So UX stands for user experience. UI stands for user interface. And both of those things are very different, but they work really seamlessly together. And a good example is if you've ever used Instagram or any app, social app, the UX is the experience that you have scrolling through images, liking things and seeing the reaction of the heart popping up and how that makes you feel, being able to know exactly where to go to make comments without having to really be onboarded. That's the UX side of things that goes with a lot of research and competitive analysis and seeing what human, what is it called? Just human
interface.
Not human interface, but just like habits, right? So habit tracking and things that we're used to. And so that's the UX side, while the UI is how everything looks. So while you feel good seeing the heart pop up, the color of it, the shape of it, the animations of it, how it works, where it's placed, that's the UI side. And so those two things work so beautifully together because a lot of times we just see the product and we're like, it's just done. But it's the research that goes into that tapping of the heart and the animation of it and why it's the color that it is and why it appears in the center versus just appearing on the side. So yeah, that's how I would describe it.
That's a pretty good description because I think that shows us a lot that, things that we take for granted, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that get you there. And also from a business perspective, I'm guessing there's a lot of revenue tied to those things too. And you probably can see, changes that, if you can make the customer feel a certain way, they're probably more likely to buy or more likely to participate in your services.
Mm-hmm. And the good thing is all of these things, right? Like we're in a time where everything is data backed. And so like going back to that example of that heart, like, Instagram has data on how many people used it versus how many people used it before they had updates to it. And so there's such instant gratification in feedback now with like, oh, I'm happy I did this thing. My users are happy. They're using it more. And it just brings on more, it makes it more comfortable to accept change and evolve. Yeah. Cool.
So how do you guys use data when it comes to giving that feedback to clients and customers?
Responsibly. Hannah, do you?
Yeah, one way that we do is we'll work on projects, and again, it depends on like timeline and budget, but if it allows for it, then we'll always recommend and do UX research as part of the project. And so whether it be a branding experience that we rebranded an organization that hasn't branded since 1998. And so that was like a huge overhaul and it was really fun. And even for a branding experience, we'll do user research on, understanding the target audience, how are they currently experiencing the brand, getting some data and stats around that. What are they saying? And so when we're going into design and development, we're always making our design choices based on what the user has said. And then we'll do a survey afterwards to compare and contrast. And so in that way, we, use data as much as possible from the users. And so that goes same with if we're doing a web design experience or an interface design experience, we'll try to survey or interview as much as possible. So we have some data against what we're actually making design decisions on.
How important is it? Like you mentioned surveys and getting that instant feedback and gratification. Do you also compare that information with like let's say Google Analytics or something else that's also helping tracking? And then I know there's some other other real-time analytics that people are using out there. Do you guys compare, compile all that information together and try to make the best decision, or is it like you take certain pieces here and certain pieces there? I just don't quite understand how that works.
Well, it depends on the client, right? So if we have client that needs a website made, which we did. We had a client that had a holiday campaign. And so those are really time sensitive. And so it's knowing like we need to know what the impact is immediately. Mm-hmm. And so we'll use tools like Google Analytics and Hotjar because we need as much information in as little time as possible. And so with Hotjar, it's things like heat mapping and where users are scrolling and how long they're staying in certain sections. If they're getting past the first or second fold, and by that, the first fold means that first part of the website that you can see in your browser. Second fold is after you scroll down to that second part of the view and so forth. And so we collect data like that even because it's so important for us to be like, okay, so we can see. And based on the data that we actually got from that project, we made changes where we were like, oh, it looks like some people are going to this specific product. We can move it, or it looks like people aren't getting past the first fold. We need to make this feel more, we need to make this a little stronger or create incentives to scroll down. And so, yeah. Answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's really cool how you guys can take information and feedback and quickly make changes and see like, okay, this is having an impact. Let's amplify that and have a bigger impact. Or maybe we need to encourage the user to do something, to scroll or take an action. So we'll move that. Have you found any interesting like things that you didn't expect maybe when it comes to type of browsers or, mobile versus desktop for certain tools or certain things that you've worked on where you've seen something that's very unexpected?
Always. I would say there's a lot of times where I'm shocked that users or clients will come to us and we'll see their data. And we are in such a mobile heavy time, right? Everyone has a phone. Everyone's on their phone. Yeah. But I think because of the new switch with remote working, so many sites now are having more desktop users than they are mobile users. It used to be build for mobile first. I think anyone in UX or in product design knows that. That was always the law. But now when we're looking at numbers, we're seeing that actually a lot of people are using their desktops more often and viewing their sites on desktops. And that's huge because that changes the way we build things and what we're placing importance on. But that was probably the biggest shocker I think I've had since last year.
Yeah, I can as a user concur with that because I used to do I remember 2 years ago, I did every bit of my shopping on my phone, for Christmas and holidays. And I noticed last year that I was doing most of my ordering on Amazon, using my desktop, not my phone, not the app anymore. And it didn't occur to me, but I was like, it's actually nicer to have it on this bigger screen where I can see the picture better. I mean, I could, zoom in with my fingers, but it's just a better experience when it's on your desktop. And, the fact that now everybody has laptops and most people work from home, so they're sitting on their couch with their laptop anyway, might as well just use that to go to Amazon versus pulling out my phone and searching.
Yeah.
So what are some of the new changes or things that you've seen, maybe come about with the introduction of generative AI and things that are out there that may be affecting some of the projects that you've worked on?
I would say, you're closer to it, but in terms of the projects that we've worked on and how we're integrating into our company, because we get asked that a lot, just because AI is so big, I think we just try to see it as opportunity as much as possible. It's a tool that we can utilize to become more efficient, whether it be in copywriting. We also have on our team people whose first language isn't English, for example. And we see that as an asset because they also have a different perspective and they're thinking in things in different languages. And so, but for the sake of our work, we'll use, ChatGPT or any other copywriting AI services for them to be able to feel like the extra support for writing or for translating. That's like an example for our internal team. And then also, of course, with, V could talk to more with Midjourney and how we're utilizing AI, but how do we make it like work for us as much as possible? And we've seen like a lot of efficiency with just internal operations, like using Fathom, which is a great video recording tool for clients. And it, gives us summaries of the takeaways. So instead of having our project manager having to go back and rewrite everything, now we have it condensed in 10 seconds after a call. So we've used AI. I love how we're using AI internally for operational efficiency. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think internally it definitely creates more efficiency, which is great. It makes things a lot easier. It makes pulling inspiration and making inspiration a lot easier with work. With clients, I think right now AI is very trendy. And I think, so more than anything, a lot of clients come in saying that they want it. And so we're in places where we're like, okay, so you can't just want it. We have to figure out how, right? You know, I think you had a guest before who mentioned like AI is advanced machine learning and or something along those lines. And it's true because it's still a tool. And it still needs like refinement and things like that. So we have a lot of clients who come in and they'll have projects or products that are that need tools. And so instead of how it used to be where we think of third-party APIs and things like that, we're depending on AI can come in and fix all of this. AI will allow us to have a chat bot and we're good to go. We don't need all of those other things. And I think that's what I'm seeing a lot of with clients coming in and wanting AI on products and things. It's very new for a lot of people. I would say, were you asking like where we see it going with our industry?
Yeah, because I mean, it sounds like right now you have a lot of clients that you sort of have to train on what is AI and how to use it, not just that it's it's this nice buzzword that's out there. And like you're saying, people want AI, but they don't realize that if you want a chatbot with AI, you need to train that on some of the frequently asked questions that you would normally have on your site, so that it can answer properly. Otherwise, it's kind of useless.
Yeah.
And you're right. I've had people talk about how it is just a tool, and I think one of the best examples that I had someone on talking about was that AI is like a calculator for words. It's one of the ways that in the past we were like, well, we don't want our kids to use calculators; they have to learn math the long way and hard way, and then now everybody uses calculators. We want them to do the same thing with words, so we need to incorporate that and teach them some of the things about it. But yeah, where do you see it going in the future?
I think we've been really lucky enough to meet some amazing, what I want to call AI engineers, curators. I don't know what to call it, but people who kind of use AI in this harmonious way where they'll create systems within systems at work. And I feel like that's what's going to start happening. And we're seeing it with ChatGPT, where ChatGPT started as just one-off service. You go in, you type this thing, and it replies to you, gives you replies. It feels like a person. And now we're seeing that there's apps. It's beginning to create a marketplace. We know that that's what's coming. If we look at any application, anything that's ever existed anywhere, it can't exist without a marketplace, right? It has to incorporate humans building it out. That's what makes things big. And so I feel like with ChatGPT, the marketplace is where it's going to grow the most. People are going to start developing their own AIs and own systems, and those things are going to be able to work with other things. And I feel like that's for the next like 2 to 3 years. I think that's where I see, I can't even say, it could be a month. AI is growing at a rapid pace, but I think that's where I see it going, where it's more so about encouraging people to build on top of it and create new systems that we haven't even thought of yet. Like right now we just think of it like, oh, it could write things for us. It can answer questions, but I'm watching people build entire businesses. I think the creator of ChatGPT just said that we're on the cusp of having our first like one person business, $1 billion business, right? Because it's such a big tool that has so many things in it where you can have an entire company run off of this run by one person. And so you can only do that with a marketplace. Like while he's saying that, I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, just one person having this $1 billion business. Like, no, one person who's probably going to be using the AI marketplace and a bunch of different systems to create a business, right? And I think that's beautiful. I'm hoping Web3, maybe even Web4 comes in faster and sooner, because you might be in trouble. But yeah, that's where I see it going.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential and a lot of, unknowns when it comes to where it's going to go. But I think the marketplace is definitely crucial to the growth of it. Because you're right, you got to have, there's been so much money invested in ChatGPT, and yeah, they're making some money now, because you can subscribe, but until they get to that next tier, like the App Store marketplace,
Exactly.
It's not gonna, it's not gonna be viable. Yeah.
TikTok did it with their filters and things like that, and now they did it so well with music collabs and stuff that Universal went through that whole thing where they just shut down, right? And it's because a lot of people see the value in having a marketplace. There's a value exchange, and if it doesn't exist, it doesn't work. Instagram does it with their marketplace with creators or businesses being able to come in and connect with influencers. Every company that's ever grown into anything, they know that they have to have that into it. They have to add it. And I think with AI, it's more so on the level of the App Store than it is on the level of Instagram. It's like, it's definitely a bigger market.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about growing your company, because you mentioned at the beginning that you guys wanted to see this as being not just a 2-person, studio, but something much larger, and you wanted to have team, and you've done that. You've built a team, and even if you go to your website and you see about us, you see your team first. You see the people and kind of what they're doing. I think that's really cool that you guys have done that. What has that been like from a leadership perspective for hiring the right people and finding the right people and understanding that you have to get somebody that fits the niche that you're looking for?
Yeah. It's been an adventure. I would say it's humbling and it's also challenging. And I think it's like an area where Vi and I are always saying like, hey, this is our first time doing this, or this is our first time at this crossroads, and just kind of trying to make the best decision with the resources that we have and the knowledge that we have at that point of the company. Like how we hire today looks very different than when we first started hiring, and a lot of it's like refining our intuition within systems, because you're just going off of what you know. But I would say, I think like one of the best like advice, I think it's like a quote out there, but like someone else's 80% is better than your 100%. Meaning like folks that are going to work for you, like we're all human, people are going to make mistakes, and they might not care about the company as much as the founders do, of course. And so wanting perfection and kind of like the micromanagement that comes with it is just not worth it on both sides. And so what we've tried to do is try to give a shot. It's like a mutual contract. Like we're hiring you to work on this role for this. We're going to give you the best resources that we have. We're also expecting this. And so we try to be really clear about our expectations, and then also what resource that we can give and help. And then you have to show up. And I think we've had times, I think our biggest people learning challenges have been banking on people's potential more than their actions. And so with the idea of like, hey, but I feel like, she or he has like potential to grow to this. And I think one thing we realize is like when people show you who they are, like the first time, you really have to believe them, because we've gotten burned by like waiting around or hoping that we would overstretch ourselves to make someone to their potential. But at the end of the day, the people that I think have really shown up on the team are people who are action oriented, and they're go-getters, and they're growth minded. And so I think those characters and values are things that we really care about, because expertise and knowledge you could create and learn over time, but certain like person characters is really hard to come by.
Yeah, definitely. I think attitude's so important, and finding someone that has that desire to learn and desire to get out there and give it a shot and try is so important. And how do you find that though? Like when you're hiring someone, what kind of questions do you ask, or how do you discover that?
Oh, go ahead, Hannah.
I think it's been trial and error on our end, and it depends, but
process. We definitely
we now definitely do an exercise for interviews and for a role, because it's a big investment. I think people are the biggest expense and biggest investment. We also see it as like our house. Like we're a small company, so whoever comes into our home makes an impact, whether their energy be great or negative. Like it infiltrates and it makes everyone else step up to their level. I think that's the number one thing we've also seen. When you bring on like an A player, everyone else has to rise up to the A player round. if you bring on a B player, we tolerate that, then everything else becomes tolerable. So our standards change with whoever we have in the house. And so, yeah, I think we try to ask a lot of good questions, look at the action and work. But I think our biggest favorite thing to do is do rounds of exercise to see how someone thinks, how they take feedback and criticism on the spot, if there's any changes that they make from that. We're watching for all those interactions. And I think at the end of the day, we're trying to see if we can work together. Are you moldable? Can you communicate with us? Are you going to have an ego? Or, is there a trigger that's not working within our relationship? So it's like a dating experience, but.
Yeah. And we bring the team into we're at a size where we have semi-departments, but we like to make sure okay, we know that this person is going to be here. Let's make sure we see how they interact with the team that they're going to be working with and how they feel about each other, right? And so we'll have someone come in and we'll let them interact with the internal team, and we can tell immediately that there's a vibe. There's a vibe that's not right. And so that will be a big indicator for us to say this isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm. So I teach part-time at Winthrop University, and one of the things I'm trying to get my students to understand is that it's so important, not just that you can do the job and that you have the skills and education and whatever to get the job, but how you show up is so important. And I would much rather have someone that has 80% of the skills, but 100% of the attitude and, communication style and will, show up in a way that makes me feel like they want to be here. What kind of advice would you have to someone? Because my students they're digital information design, which is the program DIFT, which a lot of them are UI UX. It could be in web programming. They could be somewhere in that field. What advice would you have to someone like that that's looking to, land a job at a place like Oak Theory?
I feel like your advice that you just had was great. And then on top of it, because we're in such a digital industry, showing up first means digitally showing up. And so it's really important to make sure your portfolio doesn't just show what you do, but it shows who you are, because that's something that we definitely look at. As any applicant that we have, especially, the noise in the background, any applicant that we have that comes in, we immediately go, especially on the design side, we immediately look at that portfolio, and I want to see who you are. I want to see what you write about yourself, how you feel about what you do, because those things are important. And then case studies, how you write them out, what they look like. Of course, the talent, we want to see it. But I would say one piece of advice is to make sure you have a portfolio in this industry.
Yeah, I would add from a more attitude side, I think we've definitely filtered. We look for skill, but I think we hire for attitude, like a lot of people say. And it's really true. It's really, I think what we've seen is dang, we root for someone, but they can't show up, or we're surprised by some people who do show up. And I think it's that grit and hunger that some people have. And, and I think that also comes with people who are really creative. When you just have to get creative to find a solution, and you have the hunger to know how to solve for it, even though the answer is not right in front of you, that type of creative thinking and problem solving and the go-getterness is when you find that, it's amazing, because you could just create. So it creates a room to create instead of, it can't be done because of this, or it can't be done because of that. And now we're kind of creating, the why nots. And so I think if you have the attitude and the energy and the drive, I love when we have listings up for jobs, and I could just tell right away if someone reaches out to me, informally with an email, it just already tells me you're a go-getter. It tells me so many different things. And so I think those things are actually more rare than I had thought when I was on the other side of it. As an employer, I'm wow, they're, these are qualities that it's really hard to come by. But when you do, it's we're going to invest in, for us at least, we're going to invest in you so much as you want to be invested.
Yeah. And I will double down on the critical thinking or just the creative thinking part, because when you're coming into a job, the goal is to create ease. And a lot of times I think we get applicants who come in for just the job, and it's no, you're doing the job, but you're creating ease. Where is that ease coming from? And so it's like being able to, sometimes I'll do it with test projects, is make it vague, right? The test project will be very vague because you have to think about what needs to be done to do it. And that's because of a lot of people that we had, I don't want to say a lot, some people that we've had just will not. They need to be handheld a lot. And it's like, okay, I know where to put you. But there's some who come in and they are creative. They will say, oh, I need to do this thing. This is how I can do it. I can find resources. I know how to go and like get this done. And then if it's not perfect, it's not perfect, but they still attempt. And I think that's such a quality that is so rare. So yeah, that's really like, to be able to creatively think and have critical thinking skills is so chef's kiss.
Yeah, well, there's a book called The Accidental Creative by a guy named Todd Henry, and it's one of my favorite books, and I have my students read it for first class, but it's all about how a lot of people that maybe aren't even in a creative field, or they don't think they're in a creative field, like, go back to software developers, a lot of them don't think they're in a creative field. They think, I just write code. But this book talks about how in order to be successful at your job, you need to show up with a creative mindset. And you have to show up thinking that, yeah, I write code, but I am solving problems and I'm coming up with creative solutions to solve problems. And I think that's such a underrated skill set, and something that people don't talk about a lot is to come with that creative thinking. And I love the fact that you talked about giving vague directions to see how creative people can be when they come up with those solutions. So I think that's a really cool thing. One last question that I have when it comes to this whole mindset of leading and managing a team. As your team grows and as your people grow, what kind of things have you guys been working on, or maybe what do you have in store for continuing to grow within your studio, getting your studio even larger?
We are. Yeah, do you want me to?
No, go ahead.
So, first, what do we call it? Ecosphere? So, one of the things that we love to do is, as I said, as we grow, we grow and we find more places to grow. And one thing is, as we grow, we like to keep everything aligned with what our services are, what we offer, and how we can offer more, or how we can just create experiences that feel like there's less having to go outside to get a service. And so with that comes like hosting. That's something that we started offering this year. And that allowed us to say, hey, we know that you're building this thing. Allow us to house it for you so that you don't have to go somewhere else and then it's separated from the experience, right? It allows us to have an easier experience and the clients have an easier experience. And so the way we're growing is growing within building our ecosphere. I don't know, Hannah, maybe you could speak to this better, but it's just, we just have a lot of brain moments where we're like, okay, we see this client pain point. Is the pain point from us not being attached to helping them solve it? Yes. Okay, so let's offer this service so that way we can solve this for them and they don't have to go outside to someone else. And that goes with marketing too. We started offering marketing because we realized, hey, we're building out your brand, but you don't know what to do with it afterwards. You don't know how to get the word out there. You don't know how to put together, how to visually put it out on your socials. And so we also offered that now. And it's just things that keep everything together within house, and it's been growing so beautifully.
Yeah, so we're like growing our like ecosystem, but I think at the same time our biggest focus this year, and I think this is something that like a lot of like entrepreneurs or people who are building businesses, like it's called like a shiny object syndrome, where you're like, oh my god, we could do this too and that too, and it becomes like the focus is scattered. And so one thing we try to do is we like have our internal backlog of like, okay, like so many good ideas, like let's put it in our backlog. It's gonna come up again when it needs to. Like we know that it's in our sphere. Like we know that it's possible. This year we're really focusing on like simplifying in order to scale. And so how do we get our systems as simple as possible? How do we get our whatever we're existing, like our existing services, how do we get it to be more efficient? So that when we as we're adding these new services or adding a bigger team, that it doesn't become heavier, but it's really like we have like a well-oiled, like, well-run machine. And so that's a lot of like work to like simplify like a system and like have people in place to run it and have different like levels of tiers of services and it being running in parallel but differently. And so I think like this year, Vi and I are both learning a lot about like systems and operations, and also like, also marketing. So like we're constantly growing, but I think it's like, I really like that we also know when to be like, okay, hold up, before we get bigger, like let's make sure the house is like the foundation's clean and sturdy. Yeah. Otherwise, I've seen like businesses like they could grow, but it could be like really miserable growing, So we always told ourselves like we never want to be miserable at our own company or feel like an employee at our own company. And so, whatever like hard work we have to do to like set ourselves up for the next thing, like we try to, do that first.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really good. I love the fact that you guys are growing into other areas and services that kind of come in, but also realizing that you've got to get that foundation together. One of the things I started probably, 6 or 8 months ago, I started doing hydroponics, growing plants and stuff inside my basement. And one of the things I learned right away is that I can give it nutrients and it can grow. But if I don't prune it and keep it like straight up, then it'll get too tall too quickly and break and fall in because it gets too top heavy. So I've learned that, with plants, doing that, keeping it pruned and understanding that this is a great idea. These tomatoes that I'm growing are great, but I have to keep them small at first until the base gets thicker and stronger until we get that foundation put in place. I think that's kind of cool what you guys are doing there too.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So how can people connect with you online, learn more about the things that you guys are doing at Oak Theory, and, maybe pick up some of your services if they feel like they need it?
You can find us on our website, oaktheory.co, and we're on Instagram, same handle, and LinkedIn, as well as that's it. But yeah, you can also email us at hello@oaktheory.co.
Say hi.
Awesome. And I'll link that up in the show notes too at geekleader.com so people can click through there as well. Veronica, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.